Hey everybody, it's Scott Kinka here, and I've finally had a few weeks to recover from Bridgepoint Tech Summit. Our latest episode of the Bridgecast is the second half of the live discussion we had at Tech Summit around AI. And we dive deep into AI's role in transforming business processes, and importantly, how it's transforming IT leadership. Remember, AI by itself solves no problems, right? It's all about the workflows and the systems around it that drive real-world ROI. We chat about how AI is enhancing human performance rather than replacing humans, and also how AI is streamlining workflows and enabling cross-functional collaboration. Don't miss out on these real-world insights and practical tips for successful AI adoption. Let's bridge the gap between technology and business together. If you find this kind of tech content useful, please give us a thumbs up or a comment and subscribe or follow on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your tech content. And without further ado, here is the second half of our live podcast in Palm Springs at Bridgepoint Tech Summit 2024.
Tech has reshaped our reality, redefining how we live, work, and connect. And driving this revolution, real people with bold ideas. Welcome to the Bridgecast, where host Scott Kinka has in-depth discussions with the brightest minds in tech. Together, they tackle the future of work, innovation, entrepreneurship, and navigating the new realities of AI and hybrid work. These conversations will give you the insights and strategies to stay ahead, both in business and life. The Bridgecast is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies. As the nation's leading tech advisory and consulting firm, Bridgepoint is disrupting the way businesses make and manage their technology and customer experience investments. We invite you to experience the better way, the Bridgepoint way. Now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
Milind, I had a note that I took down, and you can see it here in our show notes, that you made during our pre-call, which I loved. You said, we're spending more time making humans better than replacing them. Yeah. Or take it the other way around, make it a little bit more of an active thing. We're replacing humans versus making them better, kind of thing. So talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, the analogy I give is how many of us took a completely self-driving car from the airport? None. Right here from, say, if you came from Palm Springs, but everyone was in a car where the human was driving better because they had lane keep assist, they had collision avoidance. So a lot of technologies are easier for people to adopt. So I'll give you the example of, let's say, Cox Automotive, all of these brands, Kelly, Blue Book, Auto Trader. Where they are right now is trying to solve a very specific problem, which is, hey, can you make the QA process in our contact centers automated? Because we have very few QA people in terms of ratio to the agents, right? We have massive contact centers. And then you go to the world's largest food service delivery app that we all use, and they have a different problem. It's, when you have an escalation and someone's dissatisfied, they can make an inordinate amount of noise. It can escalate all the way up to your CEO. It can go into newscasts. It can go viral, pretty much, right? So how do you detect those with sentiment and nip those in the bud? And you go, all right, here's a $5 quick coupon that you can apply to your next conversation. So there are different kinds of insights and different companies that are at a particular point to solve different workflows. As I often say, AI by itself solves no problems. It's when you combine it with workflows and other systems of record in your organization, as you've rightly pointed out here, that you can really make a difference and show some ROI for the customer.
100%. Actually, I'm going to take a step back from this question. I'm going to go off script. I know you're shocked. The part of what you just said that was super interesting to me is we spent a lot of time in the opening session yesterday talking about the changing role of the IT leader in the business. And we had this graphic around the exponential IT curve that, effectively said over the last 20 years, we've moved from kind of plumbers to strategic infrastructure people to now partners in the business. And what was really interesting about, I think, what all of you said is the solution that you delivered certainly had IT in it, but in every one of those cases, the IT leader is having to partner with someone in the business. IT doesn't own sales. They don't own support. They don't own the employee experience, right? Walk us through that journey a little bit. I mean, you all have CIO relationships going back decades, right? You know, is this a scenario where the folks in this room, and whether supplier or consultant strategist, need to help the CIO potentially to bridge some gaps into some other areas of the business to be successful with an AI project?
Absolutely, 100%. And that is one of the key value propositions that you bring into these organizations today is that, because no organizations have internal friction with personalities, right? And nobody has their own personal agenda for protecting their budget and their fiefdom, right? So the reality is that you bring this force because you don't have that. You're agnostic in terms of what's the best for the CMO or whatever. And so you can get access to, on behalf of the CIO, entry point into 6 to 12 stakeholders on average in these big initiatives, right? So what's important to the CMO is completely different to the CFO, but they all have to be aligned from a steering committee on what the AI strategy is because it impacts the organization at a top line. And so the value that you bring is being that concierge, being that liaison on behalf of the entire organization and collecting all of these different use cases with the stakeholders and mapping that together to show that everybody's benefiting in different ways. And don't forget that you got to kiss the CFO's ring. So do that early. Because what you want to do is kiss that ring early. So that
never happens. Just saying, it never happens.
Oh, did I just set you up for?
You're totally good.
Yeah.
CFO has his face down. So you have to kiss the CFO's
Got
ring.
it.
I said it never happens around here.
Yeah. Noted. But it's real. I mean, in my experience selling over the years is that I've been caught off guard. Last thing we do is go to the CFO, and now your initiative's killed because he or she wasn't involved in it.
Yeah, whose budget is the AI project to improve employee experience?
That's the best question.
Right. Is it an HR initiative?
It's shared.
Is it an IT initiative? Who owns it? Even if you can get to the ROI, complicated. Anybody else have anything to add on this role? Can it change?
Yeah, I think it presents an opportunity. I think CIOs don't want to be the sole decision maker, and we have an opportunity to really make champions out of the chief customer officer for their contact center, for the CRO, for sales intelligence. And that's why it's so critical being able to offer the full end-to-end platform. Companies don't want to have to go buy 5, 6, 7 solutions. In fact, they're doing the opposite via digital transformation. And so if you have the opportunity to talk to these other peers of the CIO, create anchor points and champions in those folks, I think really what it does is creates a buying safety net for the CIO who doesn't want to have to stick their neck out solely. Now they have these champions supporting them up. It makes it a much easier conversation with the CFO, and that tends to be the way that you can have budgetary influences. Let's go get a few of the CFO's peers who are now raving fans of this platform solution, and it becomes a no-brainer.
Interesting to think of it as not only bridges that need to be made, but a way to sort of share the responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right here. Sean, anything to add?
Yeah, it's a cross-functional sale, right? It's land and expand. You have to have a champion somewhere in the business that's got a set of use cases that tied to a problem that they're willing to spend money on. Yeah. They all have budget for it. It may start there, but if you don't have that champion, they're not working cross-functionally, and you can't build that relationship cross-functionally. It's a very difficult sale.
And I think an opportunity for the consultants in the room to expand their influence inside of the organizations, right? I mean, you to get a that one was so much better.
The one thing too, you got it, Scott? And I'll also add while you're figuring out your mic, is we're talking about land and expand, wider stakeholders, but let's also remember that we are in an era of an informed buyer. All of these individuals are informed. Your value that brings is when they go to make a decision, you're validating that decision that they're making across all of them because you're external saying, I know this technology, I can validate it because I have seen it deployed in XYZ as well. So your credibility with this engagement is a 1 + 1 = 3 for them. So you're getting the liaison stakeholders, but you're also validating them from the outside, saying this is a great decision that you're making around your purchase.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Oh, sorry.
Hot here? No? Check. This one? Good? All right.
Now you sound great.
I'm trying, guys. I'm doing really well. I do feel like I'm accepting your nomination for President of the United States right now with these microphones. Very timely. I enjoy that. All right. Great points. And again, a sidebar. I like that. Let's talk about the way customers want to engage. I think one of the big, almost oxymoronic things that's occurring right now as we're talking about AI is we're coming out of the era of high touch. Right? Like, in COVID, our expectations of how we engage with an organization increased. We wanted the agent to have better information. We wanted to have a more personal relationship as we went through there. And now we're kind of entering the era of AI. And a lot of times the first inclination is, let's gut that process and slap some bots in there. That makes a lot of sense, right? Particularly when the customer has been in a position of wanting, knowing and expecting a deeper relationship. So I think you shared this slide with us, right? So I'm going to let you speak to this first. The idea here is presence versus preferences, or kind of personalization over human touch. What is the end user really expecting? And do these things need to necessarily be in conflict with each other, I should say?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a study by McKinsey, and I think more and more companies are starting to come to the same conclusion, which is buyers, customers are more than willing to do asynchronous work, watch a video, read a handout to get informed and educated on how to use a solution. But when they run into trouble, they want to speak to a person, not a virtual agent, not a chatbot, an actual person. And what this data shows for those that have trouble seeing is actually all the way through Millennial and Gen Z, that holds true. And so at Dialpad, what we have really strived to do is see these agents as heroes rather than cogs in a wheel. How do we supercharge their ability knowing that their prospects and their customers prefer to problem solve speaking human to human? It's now our job to make them more enabled, more informed, to make that interaction more delightful. We're not here to replace individuals. We're not here to see them as cogs in a wheel. We're here to see these agents, these support teams, for the value they provide and make it a much more effective and pleasant interaction when folks do run into these problems.
How often are you working the customer, though, back from that expectation, right? So take that one. We're going to do AI. How many people can we whack, right? How are you walking customers back from that expectation into the explanation that Chris just gave? You guys run into that? Kind of the idea of going for the firing first. I hate to be blunt about it, but going for the staff reduction first versus focusing on improvement effectively of the humanity. Are you walking people back from that expectation?
Absolutely. Was this a question for all of who? Me?
Fire away.
Okay. I would say absolutely. I think now what we're seeing is that although that was the initial conversation of starting and there's been debates around it in terms of AI replacing humans, it's absolutely not the use cases for AI. But what I would say is to piggyback on this personalization thing too is that when we step back and we look at the marketplace today, there's 5 generations of buyers. 5 generations that want to buy differently. And so when they do need to reach out, they want to reach out differently. But the reality is when any of us have to pick up the phone, what is the one thing we want to do is our objective? Get off the phone as fast as possible, correct? Correct? Do I get a heck yeah? Okay, so that's what we want. And then you have the other person on the other line that wants to do that too, but they don't have the tools to do that. It's not that they don't want to help you. It's not that they're a mean bitch. It's because they don't have the tools to do their job. So there's this inflection that happens where technology powers the human to be able to do that, right? To be able to connect the two of them, to get Brian off the phone as fast as possible because he's got stuff to do, and to help Mike do his job because he doesn't want to quit. And you can try and churn too. So there's all of these different components. It's not just eliminating humans.
Yeah. You want to arm the agent, right, with the information they need so they can better serve the person that's requesting it. If you can weaponize that agent, you're going to make the experience much better, right? So give them access to all the data they need so they can respond accordingly. And to your point, get on and off the call quickly. the longer they're on the call, the more it's costing that company anyways.
And me too.
And frankly, the more upset the customer is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Christy, you hit on a very important point, which is people just want to resolve their issue, right? Unless they're very lonely, in which case they want to talk to you for a long time. But one of the issues that's happened is that we've had many failed technologies. So we've had these horrendous IVR technologies in the past, and for all of us who have probably created some such technology, we owe the world an apology because we messed it up in the past, right? These things were frustration additions and a step to kind of stop the customer from actually reaching a human as opposed to solving their problem. So what's really important now is you have the data in all the conversations. So you can deflect the right calls. It's like, is my package there? How far away is it? Well, that might be something I can just see on my chatbot. Or, hey, I don't like the texture of this. I want to return it for this reason. That might be a quick call with a natural sounding voice bot. And then maybe a more complex thing, which is, I'm not quite sure which specialist I should be seeing for this condition that my grandma has. Now that's an assisted human call where all the information is coming out and is on the agent's screen in real time, right? And then there might be other things that you solve after the call, which is, hey, let me coach my agents on how this cohort is performing better at selling than that cohort of people in this contact center.
So right tool for the right job at the end of the day. All right, let's take a look at this. There's a lot of data on here. I would just want to focus on the right. Only 34% of IT decision makers feel that their organization currently has the right data and technology in place to enable effective AI. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, and I think most people have heard the Air Canada story as an example. But very regularly we meet with clients who say, I would love to automate this process. And the first question is, can we see the process? Oh, well, we train over the shoulder, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. How often are you having the you're not ready or we need to help you get ready before we can engage part to the conversation? Sean, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think we like to start with, is it people, process, or technology problem? Oftentimes, it's process, it's not necessarily a people problem. So you've got to dig into that process. But if you're leveraging AI properly, you're tying into multiple disparate data sources, that you can give access to, get information to, and better serve the customer and circumvent some of those process issues that may exist.
Gotcha. Anybody else want to add to this one?
I would also say, beyond having the right data structured the right way, when we talk about things like chatbots, you can have the best chatbot in the world, but it is pointed at a knowledge repository.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about are you ready for it, it's not just governance, it's not just your data, but really making sure your help center that is powering your agents is up to date with the most recent product names and prices and responses. AI is only as good as the information that you point it at. And I think that's kind of a panic moment for some customers that realize, oh, we've got some work to do to really get our house in order as far as our knowledge base goes. But that is a must before you plug in this kind of powerful AI solution.
When you go through the testing and piloting phase, it really is eye-opening. So depending on what the use cases are, it could be something as simple as, what are your hours of operation? It starts to run against that, and it surfaces back incorrect hours. And what inevitably comes back down to is somebody on the marketing side or somebody somewhere hasn't updated that. And they're like, oh, we've got wrong information, we better go fix that. And it's shocking just how much information sits out there isn't accurate and how quickly you surface that and how quickly they need to be able to go and repair it.
Am I thinking completely outlandishly to think that we could use AI to potentially, for the businesses that are operating over the shoulder, right? Could they begin to develop the content for the knowledge base that informs the AI, so long as it's checked, right? And fill in their gaps through their call recordings, their call logs, all of that. Milind, why don't you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say the answer to that is yes and no. in the sense that, let's take the example of, we work with a very large BPO, and one of their customers makes coffee pods and coffee machines, right? So yes, your knowledge base has the 6-step way to descale the machine. But when your agent's on the phone, can you summarize each of those 6 steps? Or are you going to use something like a chat GPT and just say, oh yeah, just go ahead and clean it? It's like a Shakespearean sonnet, which doesn't work, right? You need those 6 steps, and now you have to summarize 6 steps. So it's very nuanced on how much generative AI can solve your problem and how much structure you need to put around it to ensure that you get precise, actionable information.
Makes sense. I'm just going to, in the interest of time, kind of jump into these last couple of topics. We've talked a lot about, and we will continue to talk a lot about, some of the issues around AI governance and some of that here: accuracy, bias, privacy, right? The things that are there. There are risks across. Same CIO survey we were looking at earlier, 1 in 3 CIOs say there is no governance steps in place in the business today around AI. And they're turning on Copilot in Office 365, or they're turning on these tools. Obviously governance generally is first. So the question here is, as you're engaging with customers, so we've talked about the idea of getting after ROI, about going across the aisle to the business leaders. How often, though, are you stepping into a business who wants to use your tools and literally does not even have an AI policy yet? Have you had to walk customers back on that topic?
All the time, right? It's the number one thing that happens. Legal gets involved. It isn't a technology issue. It's a fear of the unknown. They've all heard the horror stories. They've all seen the stuff in the press. They look at it and they begin to peel the onion back and go, we have no policy or procedure in place. What if something goes wrong? And so you end up having to walk them back through the process that you're operating with inside their firewall. So if there is data that exists inside their firewall that could be offensive, they have a bigger problem that they need to go address. And so we spend an inordinate amount of time not only educating the technical teams and security teams, but the actual legal teams as well. We get on calls and we have to have, sometimes 2 or 3 calls just to help them understand how the technology operates.
Just simply stated, for our team members in the room, what are the kinds of things that are addressed in an AI governance policy? Like, what should they have, even if it's 1 sheet of paper? What should be on that sheet of paper?
Yeah, I would say, do we want this to be an all or a few solution? So there are some solutions where it's either on or off for everybody. There are other solutions that allow you to throttle. Some groups may have no access to AI, others may have it fully, and you can tailor that by region, by function. That gives a lot of security. Another one is, are we okay with data leaving our instance, going out to a third party and coming back with solutions? That's, for some companies, that is a full stop security risk. Others may be okay with it for certain groups. And so coaching them through what data are you comfortable leaving your platform and coming back? Do you want a solution where it stays fully contained in these 4 walls? Those kind of security things, I think, are headlines in that 1-pager.
Did Chris miss anything in there?
And I think we're going to see the constant evolution of the technologies in today's marketplace around this data discussion, wherein they start to morph themselves that are vertical specific, right? I think that's important. And then there'll be governors or lanes on what you have access to, knowledge base for X and open API for Y.
I mean, certainly it's not a 1-page document
No,
if it's a compliance organization, right?
Right.
I threw down the 1 page, but that's the key. When I talk to customers, I just say, at the very least, put your intentions down on paper and make sure everybody has it, right?
Yeah.
You can't control behavior all the time, but it's in many ways, it's very much like a corporate information security policy, right?
Yeah.
You don't intend to release this information. You intend them to use their PC a specific way. At the very least, that's got to be on paper someplace.
Industry plays a big factor, right? Healthcare, banking, they're highly regulated. Security is obviously utmost importance. And so they're going to have different requirements than, say, a traditional e-retail or something of that nature, right? Where you want to give access to contracts, things like that. You're just not going to be able to do that in the healthcare space.
I mean, Milind, you're in the call recording and transcription business, at the core, right?
Yeah.
You've got customers who aren't even able to store data in some cases that are in those recordings at rest.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
You have to redact stuff. You have to get rid of personally identifiable information. So all of those things are going on. Those are your traditional trust and security things. Those haven't gone away. But where we are seeing a change, even in the year and a half since LLMs became a household name, is that our InfoSec process with IT is far more mature now. In that we are not just talking about where does my data sit at rest, how is it being transported, is it going over to OpenAI servers, where are your servers located, do you have a specific cluster for HIPAA customers, so where are you doing the compute? What measures do you have in place to check for AI bias and drift? That's a real thing as you train it with bad data, right? What do you have in process to check for that? What do you have in process to check for ethics? So basically, in the past, you had an InfoSec document. Now we found we have to get ahead of that with an entire trust console, where very sophisticated, depending on the size of the organization, IT organizations are now doing this. And they've settled down. Like about a year ago, there were these ad hoc AI committees because nobody knew what to check for. Fast forward to today, and IT knows how to do this. They are running through a checklist. So it's fascinating to see that. And then as vendors, as consultants in the sales process, you have to be ahead of that, bring them in early, because otherwise it's just going to shut the door on that sale.
One of the comments I just want to pull out of that, great answer. There was a slide I had in here that we removed because the data was a year old, but it was a survey of CIOs around who owns the AI governance document in the business. And at the time, this is a year ago, and it's since moved, but 2 out of 3 CIOs said they weren't or they didn't know if they were responsible for the AI governance policy inside the business, which is really interesting. I want to get to one kind of last macro level topic. I'm going to skip ahead. We've talked a lot about helping customers outside of just consuming technology, right? Needing to get around governance, needing to find the use case, needing to help the IT leader bridge across the aisle into other peers in the business. And let's be very clear, you are all platform companies up here, right? So while you're happy to engage in those conversations, respectfully, you'd probably be thrilled if you didn't have to also, right? At the end of the day. So this slide talks a little bit about kind of this channel, the consulting channel. And there is quite a bit of skepticism, at least if you believe this data from Canalys on here, that there's a monetization opportunity for the IT consulting industry around AI. Right, so we just talked about all the challenges and all the pre-work. So what I would love for all of you to just take a quick shot at doing, right, is share with us what we can do to help you make good customers at the end of the day. Talk a little bit about integrating there. And I'll start, and we'll just go right along the road. Fire away, Chris.
Yeah. Nick, Chris is my
sorry,
full-headed,
Chris.
full-hair head alter
Why'd I
ego.
do that?
But
My apologies.
yes, no, all good. So I think one thing is give us the opportunity to work with you before we're even talking to prospects and customers, and let us help inform you on how we are tackling AI. At Dialpad, we have almost 20 PhDs in AI. We have 70 employees that their full-time job is nothing but to focus on AI. And we really want to be a resource to you all so you can come in and feel confident and informed in what's real and what's not about AI, and how we can help our customers drive to their business outcomes that are tied to their stated strategic initiatives. I think all too often we get engaged when there's an opportunity, there's a prospect, there's a customer. There's an opportunity for us to work one-to-one in preparation for a lot of really meaningful prospects and customers. And we are happy to help advise and consult and teach on what we're seeing in the AI landscape and how we can partner together to be really effective.
Great answer. Milind?
Hey, I'll spell it down in 3 steps. 1, the money's there. If you look at contact centers, there's 17 million agents. What did we spend money on per agent per month before? It was CRM, workforce management. What is the money going to go in? It's an AI, so let's be ready for it. It's there. It's happening. 2, the customers are here. This is not a tomorrow and day after technology. We have 350 customers all the way from mid-enterprise to large enterprise. So make sure you're talking in the language of the customer in the industry they're in. And 3, partner with us. Just like you said, I'll give a shout out to 2 of my colleagues who are here. Jim Tennant, he's our VP of channels. Go find him, talk to him. Talk to Scott Eastman, who's here as well. And, let's work together and solve these problems.
Sean?
Yeah, I'd echo what both Nick and Milind just said, right? We're here to partner with you. We're here to help educate you. Let us spend some time. We'll spend some time helping you understand what the opportunity looks like, why it's important for you and your customers, and how you go capture some of that market share. We can arm you. We've got an army of resources ourselves, and I do think that we can partner together and drive a nice chunk of revenue.
Love it. Christy?
I'd say we don't want to be everything to everyone. So what I would love to do is collaborate with you and understand what the ideal customer profile is for our solution. And then once we tear down from there, what are the use cases specifically around that ideal customer profile, and learn the use cases, because that's the best way to start a conversation with the customer. And then also a couple of our win wires. Those 3 things, 1, 2, 3, gets you into a conversation for the right fit for us, and it doesn't waste time mutually in partnership.
I love it. So we're going to wrap up. Hey, first off, before we get into the wrap up here, can we thank these guys for bearing with me and my voice here? Make sure you see them when we're around today. Nick, Milind, Sean, Christy, great job by these guys today. And in terms of for the customers who are watching this at home, we've got a great framework around getting there from here around AI. We're sort of out of time on the panel, so I won't read all this, but there's some good tips and tricks here. And we are here to help you define and execute that strategy, whether it's consulting, running workshops at your business, supporting you on advisory, or engaging in guided implementation along with these great suppliers that we have here, and AI innovators, frankly, we have here on the panel. So we're thrilled. One more round of applause for our panel, please. And for those of you at home, we will see you soon on another episode of the Bridgecast. Thanks.
And we're clear.
Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.